We welcome you to another live edition of the Sports Box, brought to you by our sponsor, Showcase Sports in Hamilton. Showcase Sports for the elite athlete. And by our friends over at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and check them out at www.crowdplayapp.com for details. Ladies and gentlemen, it's showtime.
Hey everybody, welcome to the debut edition of Cage My IQ on the Sports Box. If you guys don't know us already, like I said, this is our debut. I am your host, D-Bake, and this is my co-host, Miles Long. He knows the ins and outs of the MMA, so he'll be the detail guy, and I'll just be the guy that gets us through the show. Today we will be recapping UFC 258, and then we'll also be talking about the recent announcement of the Bellator Grand Prix for the light heavyweight division, and then we're also sprinkling a little bit of talk about Gina Carano. How are you doing today, Miles?
I'm freezing my nuts off over here. I'm in Texas, and we're in the middle of a cold spike, like the likes of which we haven't seen since ever in the history of Texas. So my heater isn't working, the power's out, has been all day, so that's why everything is dark and you see candles everywhere. We're making the best out of it. So it's been a rough day.
Yep. And before we get started on the recap, just give us your comments and questions for all things MMA. You have any questions about the fight card, we'll be able to answer you as we break down each fight on the main card. Of course, just like I said, this is the UFC recap. The first fight we'll be talking about is the middleweight division matchup. Julian Marquez defeated Mikey Patolo by a third round anaconda choke. What did you take from this matchup?
So this one was interesting. I actually did really good on this card. Like, I predicted every outcome. It was a surprise every once in a while. This was one of the big surprises. You had pretty much Vitello coming out of the gate, and he was real heavy on the grappling game. I think Julian Marquez was expecting more of a standing and trading fight, but Vitello, I think his strategy was to, wrestle with Marquez, keep him up against the cage, get him tired, and then stand and trade with him. And it just it turned out he made a big mistake, just there at the end, because overall for the first two rounds he was doing pretty well. Like, that strategy was working really well for him. It looked like it was going to go to decision, and Patilla was going to win by decision, but Julian Marquez made something happen there at the last minute with his grappling. That seems to be kind of his special. He kind of seems to be struggling along, and then make something happen right at the last second. Same thing with the Phil Dawes fight. That last front kick, he just threw it in there, and it just it just ended the fight. It was one of those things. But I predicted if this fight was going to end a submission, it would have been Marquez, and I was right. I just wasn't expecting as technical of a finish as an anaconda choke. Again, it was just Patelo made a mistake. He misstepped, and he left an opening, and Marquez jumped on it. So.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. In the first two, I just felt like all Mikey was doing was going for the takedown, and once he got the takedown, he just kind of laid on him, applied pressure on him, tried to wear him out. But in return, he kind of spelled too much energy on himself, putting that pressure on. And then once the third round came, Marquez just knew that he had to go for broke. And then when it happens, the fighter just lets loose. And what he did was he waited until he got a little bit spelled out, and then he just went for the kill. He got him with a couple shots, got him on the ground, and then was able to get him in that anaconda choke. At first, Patolo got out of it, but then he was able to reposition, get it back on, and kind of flip over and had him stuck in it to where it was basically lights out for Patolo, and he got that
Mhm.
that miracle comeback right there in the last like 2 minutes of the third round. And then of course they did the interview at the end, which was the best part. And then it looked like he was getting ready to challenge somebody, and then he was like, Miley Cyrus, will you be my Valentine? And then like you go on later on and you find out she said that if you shave my like name or something on your chest, I'll be your Valentine. So
Yikes.
but it was yeah, but it's a good thing to see him to get off right away, considering he had been off for 2.5 years with two freak injuries that required like a long
Yeah.
time to recover from, and then he was able to come back. Even though he struggled in the first 2 rounds, he was able to get the victory, and then get off on the right foot, because now you can use that as a stepping stone to move back up, because like before the injury he was on a little roll there. He was doing a little good before that happened. So I'll be interested to see where they book him going forward, knowing that he got this out of the way, he was able to win, and all he really did was he didn't really get hit much, he just got taken down and then laid
Right.
on. So it'll be interesting to see how long he has to wait until his next fight.
Yeah. No, I think he definitely needs to work on his wrestling game. Hopefully he picked that up from this, which is interesting because when he was in the Phil Hawes fight, Phil
Yeah.
Hawes is an excellent wrestler, and he seemed to be, for the most part, hanging in there. Phil Hawes definitely a better wrestler than Maki Patel. So
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what happened there, but his wrestling just kind of wasn't there that night. And yeah, it really showed, and it put him in a position where he really had to give it all or nothing there in that last round, or he was going to lose. So hopefully
Yeah,
he'll tune that up for the next fight.
yeah, and we'll be seeing Phil Hawes pretty soon, considering he's going to be fighting on a Saturday at UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Blades, and I'm very interested to see how he does there. But let's move on to the second fight on the card, which was pretty good. It took the place of the Jim Miller fight against Green, because at weigh-ins, right after weigh-ins, Bobby Green actually passed out. It fell down. They had to put him on IV, and the new rule with the UFC and all of MMA is once you get an IV in, you're a no-go because of everything with that. So they had to scrap that fight off the card, and hopefully they'll reschedule it in the next few weeks, because that was a fight that was booked on 2-3 weeks notice, and I actually want to see it happen, because Jim Mill's a guy that's been like a mainstay of the UFC. He doesn't get the flash or the fame that he should, but he's been one of the guys that held the division over there for the longest time. We got Brian chiming in. Welcome to the team, guys. Excited to have Cage My IQ on the Sports Box. Thank you very much for having us. Give us a platform to talk MMA. It's been a thing that I've loved to watch the past 5-10 years, and I know you personally have trained it a little bit, so it's a nice thing to do. But to tune to the next thing, we got a featherweight division matchup where Ricky Simone defeated Brian Cowher by unanimous decision. All three judges scored this 30-27 on the card. What did you think of this fight?
Yeah, I mean it was pretty one-sided. Simone was really good at just taking away Keller's options. I think Keller wanted to stand and trade because he's a kickboxer. He's got the better hands, but Simone just wasn't having it. I mean, his hands weren't terrible, but I think like that's what he figured out in the second round. Simone kind of stood and traded with Keller a little bit, and then he was like, this is a bad plan. So he rethought things, came up with a different strategy, but he, for the most part, just used his grappling and just dominated the whole fight. Now, this one wasn't in our original prediction, and so this one I was just kind of guessing on the fly. But like by the end of the first round, I was like, Simon's probably going to take this one. Like, no matter if it's submission or decision, that's how this is going to end.
Yeah, like you said, we didn't do the prediction because there was a late add-on. It got added on the day before right after the Green Miller fight got scrapped from the card. And then I did like a little research before the fight, and then my pick was Ricky Simone because of what I read with his wrestling background. And basically what I took from this fight was like he was able to use the angles to get his takedowns. He would go up high, act like he's going in for a punch, and then he'd quickly swoop down and get the takedown. And then he'd go to different angles to get the different takedown attempts. And then he must have had 8 or 9 like takedowns. He actually is one of the leaders in the featherweight division in takedown like percentage. He's able to get a takedown at will. That's his game plan. He takes you down, and just like in the picture you see on the screen, he likes to use his elbows to keep the guys breathing at bay. Like he tries to push pressure on the breathing so you expel more energy, and that's what he did with Brian Cowher. And the one thing that I was kind of noticing was that Brian Callahan, towards the end of the fight, was able to have success when he took Ricky Simone in the middle of him, like right in the stomach or right in front of the face with those leg kicks. He'd do a front leg kick, and he'd hit him square in the face.
Like twice right in the face. Yeah,
right in the face.
Solid.
And he had no defense for it, because whenever, like what I noticed with Ricky Simone is when he goes for the takedowns or his punches, he goes wide. His hands go wide. So if you get him in the middle before he gets that takedown with like a kick or a punch, you can be effective with them. But it was a little too late for him because he was already too far behind on the cards, and he would have had to finish him. But I would have liked to see him use this game plan a little early on, and then to try and avoid the takedown attempts that he was getting taken down with. But it just seemed like he had no match for the takedown pressure of Simone. He just had his way and then dominated. And this is a guy that probably moved into the top 15, and he's only 28. He's fairly young, like moving into the ranks of the division. And I would like to see him face like an Edson Barbosa type guy next, or something like that, or a Bryce Mitchell, to where somebody that can be a challenge. And then if he can win that, he'd probably move into the top 10 from there. But he's a guy to watch out with in the future with how young he is.
Yeah. No, he did a pretty solid job that time. It was interesting because Brian Keller should have been using more kicks in terms of leg kicks and stomach kicks. But I think what he was worried about was getting caught up. Like I think he was worried Simone was going to catch those legs and then use that to drag him down to the floor.
Yeah.
But Simone needs to also work on his kick defense then, because that's a valuable tool. Like we saw in the next fight coming up on this card, a lot of leg catches off of kicks and knees that can lead you right into takedowns, and they're super useful if you know how to do that sort of thing. And as a wrestler, that should be in his repertoire, but we didn't really see it. It seemed like when the legs got involved, he's just like, I don't know what to do now. But to be fair, Keller does have super long legs. That's a big attribute of his.
I wonder if he got four of himself where he just thought that he could just go in for the takedown because he had so much success, and he just didn't think to block it. Or if, like, that's just a thing that maybe Brian Cowher noticed and caught towards the end, that maybe a fighter like that will be fighting Ricky Simone next could use later on and take notes on. Okay, he didn't have success defending the leg kick in the front, so maybe if I add that to my repertoire against him, I can keep him at arm's length and keep him from getting those takedowns if I'm not very good at takedown defense. And then go from there and then try and pressure Simone instead of him pressuring you, because that's what he used to his advantage. He pressured the fight, and then he made it his game plan instead of Cowher's game plan. But we got David chiming in. Simone's technique was flawless. Definitely agree. And then we got Mike Galetta saying, welcome aboard, guys. Welcome to our Sports Box family. We're thankful to be part of it now. And thank you so much. But moving on to the next fight, the third fight, which was a pretty good matchup going into it. I thought it was going to be pretty good. And then a wind up early on started out really good and then kind of went one-sided as we got to like round 2 and 3. We had another middleweight division matchup where Calvin Gastelum defeated Ian Heinisch by split decision, 30-27, 29-28, and then 29-28, where we saw him get back on the winning spell after not having a win for the past 3 years. They interviewed him right afterwards, and he was so thankful to finally get on the right horse. And then if you were able to catch us last week on the predictions, what I said was he needed to get back to his wrestling roots and use that because he's gotten away from it. And what did he do after round 1? He got back to it. And then Ian Heinisch, just like in the last fight, he wasn't able to defend the takedown. But before I get into that more, I want to get your input on this fight.
Yeah, so this one was interesting because Gastelum doesn't usually do a whole lot of wrestling, a whole lot of grappling, even though his background for it, his credentials are excellent. And when we talked about this last time we were on, or last week, I basically said no matter how this fight ends, it's a Gastelum victory, whether it's KO, submission, or decision. I see Gastelum winning against Ian Heinisch and all the different outcomes here. Although I did say that the submission would be most unlikely because they don't tend to grapple much, but it was a decision victory, but I got a decision victory correct, but for the wrong reasons, right? Like I was thinking it was going to be because Heinisch is easily drawn into, making bad moves, and that's kind of Gastelum's specialty in terms of his striking game, and Heinisch wasn't going to utilize enough power kicks to the legs and to the calves, which he started off doing that a little bit in the first round, and then he just kind of abandoned that for some reason. But yeah, I think Ian Heinisch went into this thinking, oh, Gastelum, he's a power striker guy. He's got good hands. So if I force him to grapple, then, I can tire him out, and I might not necessarily be able to submit him, but I can get him tired enough to where I can knock him out or win by decision. But I think he just either didn't know or he underestimated Kevin Gastelum's wrestling background and his jiu-jitsu background. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt, and I think he transitioned into wrestling once he started doing like MMA stuff. But the dude's really, really good on the ground. You can't underestimate him. He just tends to enjoy standing and trading hands more so than grappling. And I think Ian Heinisch started out with that plan, probably first round, a little into the second round, and then he figured out, okay, this is not a good game plan anymore. I need to change things up. But by that time, it was too late. Gastelum, he smelled blood in the water, so he's like, all right, let's keep doing this. This is actually working out really well for me. So I think that's kind of what his game plan turned into, because at the beginning, he was not interested in grappling at all, really. Gastelum was all hands in the beginning, but then as Ian Heinisch kept, putting him up against the cage, forcing him to wrestle, and Gastelum had more and more opportunities for the takedowns, for, just working on him on the ground, working on him on the cage. He figured out, this is probably going to be the better way to beat him because he's completely outclassed. He can't wrestle, or he doesn't have as good of a ground game as Gastelum does. And it just became more and more obvious as the fight went on. So yeah, I think probably halfway through, Gastelum kind of changed up his game plan and figured, this is probably going to be the way to go, is, win with the takedowns and win by decision rather than, try to stand and trade with him and hope for a knockout. So it was a good plan. He did it very, very well. Again, a lot of big hits to Gastelum, but he had such a chin on him, like with those knees to the face. He just took them and then put Heinisch back on the ground. That's what we were talking about the last fight with Simone. That's kind of what he should have been doing with his wrestling background, is looking for opportunities to take those kicks and take those knees and then turn them into takedowns and start working on the ground, just like Gastelum did just throughout this fight. He did it at least 4 times that I remember. But yeah, it was a very good match. Very good match.
Yeah, we got Thomas chiming in. Congrats on joining the Sports Box. Great for a show. Thank you very much. But my opinion on this was, like, in the beginning, I thought the fight was going to end early on with those 2 Kimura locks that he had Gastelum put in. Like, he had that bent back so far. I was waiting for him to tap. Like, that's how far he had it. But then he was able to weather the storm, get out of it, and then after that, like, he had the takedown, and then it just seemed like with how easy he had it going, just like in the picture that I had, how he just ragdolled him down. He just like you said, he smelled like just blood, and then he went for the kill each time, and then he had no defense for it. He just picked them up, threw them down, picked them up, threw them down, and it was just on like repeat. Like, and then he would just pressure him, get him with the elbows, tired him out, and then he just won that way. It was like the old Kelvin Gastelum, where he would use the wrestling to get his game going instead of just going training blows right away up top, left and right, because that's how he would lose. He'd do that, get away from his game, and then get behind on the scorecard, because his striking isn't his bread and butter, it's his wrestling. So he was able to do that, get that going. He basically kept himself in the top 10 with this, because if he would have lost, he would have fell outside the top 10. So I'd be interested to see who they pin him up against now, because he has to move up. I think he was in the bottom half of the top 10. So it'll be interesting to see what guy.
9, I believe. I think he was number 9 before this fight, and Heinisch was 15. So we'll see. Maybe like a number 7, number 6 pick, something like that.
Yeah, other than that, like, we got quite a bit of guys in that middleweight division to go after. Like, I would have to look at it, but it's not going to get anybody in the top 5, because he just fell outside of it. I could see him getting a rematch with Jared Cannonier, because he lost and he doesn't really have anybody, because you got Whitaker going up against Costa, you got Adesanya, of course, going up against Jan Blachowicz, and then that leaves Cannonier free and open with no one to fight. So I'd be interested to see if they go, oh, we'll get you him again, and then see how you do with that. And then if he wins that, then he can creep back up into the top 5 and get and take the loser of maybe Costa and Whitaker, because you kind of got to start eliminating guys from that title picture, especially with Adesanya. If Adesanya wins, he's going to be a double champion, so he might relinquish that middleweight title, and then you're going to have to have a situation kind of like in the lightweight, where you're going to need to find a new champion, because he's going to move up the light heavyweight now by being champion. He's not going to try and defend both. I doubt it. The only person that I've seen that to defend both belts when they've had it was Amanda Nunes, and that's it. Yeah,
that's true.
But it's good to see him get back on track. Like, he was a beast beforehand, and then fell off for the 3 years, but now he's back. Now he's on the winning side, and he can get moving back to that goal that he had, that he set on Saturday, and getting back into the title picture.
Yeah, I'm wondering what's going to happen to Ian Heinisch, because he wasn't really all that highly ranked before this fight. And I mean, that's the thing. Every turn he was outclassed. He had 2 excellent Kimura setups. That should have been the end of it. And I mean, Gastelum was defending really well. Like, given the angle and the fact that he didn't have the arm behind the back, or he didn't have it close enough into the body to put enough torsion on the shoulder, he was just literally overpowered twice when given a perfect Kimura setup, and then just taken down over and over and over again throughout the fight. I see him falling out of the top 15, and I don't know if we hear from Ian Heinisch anymore. This might be it for him.
I hope we hear from him again, because it was a good story to hear about him. Like, he was down, like, he was basically at rock bottom. He was in Riker Island. He was in jail, comes out, has like a complete 360 life switch. It goes on the good side, starts training MMA. It keeps him at bay. Nothing happened, and then his father actually came out and was one of his guys at the ringside, or at the side of the octagon. His dad came out to be part of his crew, which was a good thing for him. Like, it's a good sign for him. And then it sucks that he lost, but at least we got to see a little bit of the submission aspect from him, which was kind of questionable going into this, because that Kimura, like, you couldn't lock that on any more than he had in there. Like, it reminded me of Brock Lesnar on Triple H, a few years ago at WrestleMania. That bad, like he had it that high up, and it just like you said, he got overpowered, and then Gastelum got out of it, and then got to his game. So like a fight that could have ended early on wound up going just like that the other way. That's what happens in MMA. If you slip up, the other guy will take advantage of it, and then he'll get things going for him so he can get to that point to where he can get the victory. And that's what Gastelum did. He won by decision. It didn't like he definitely had his shots in striking, but it was majority just him be ragged on Heinisch around the octagon. And yep. But to move on to our co-main event, which I definitely would take the blunder for. I got this so wrong, and you got it right. You definitely nailed it. Was a women's flyweight division matchup between Alexa Grasso, who defeated Macy Barber by unanimous decision. All three judges scored this 29-28. What did you take from this fight?
So the reason I predicted Grosso would win by decision, I basically said that was her main path to victory, because going into this fight, it was pretty unsure because Macy Barber's coming off of a knee injury, and knee injuries in the world of MMA are just, they're crushing. Like that's a make or break kind of injury, and it's a career ender sometimes if it's bad enough. So, the question was, how much has Macy Barber recovered from that knee injury? Is she back to 100%? Like what's the state of her game post injury? Because we've seen plenty of fighters in the past. They had a very different game before and after an injury, and typically after the injury, if they don't have enough time and enough experience to adjust quickly, they tend to just go on this losing streak until they just fall out of the public eye. And that, unfortunately, that seems to be what happened to Macy Barber. Is post injury. The thing is, she wasn't moving too differently. She was still working. She was still staying busy. I think what happened is it fucked with her mentally. Like you hear sometimes NFL players talk about how, like, if they have knee injuries, it gets in their head and then it affects their gameplay because they're doubting themselves and stuff like that. I think that's kind of what we saw here. There may have been some physical impairment, but she was working a lot. She was staying busy. But it seemed like, especially with the jabs, what the fuck was that? She was just jabbing into the air like 5 feet away. Alexa Cross was just watching her like, what are you doing? I saw a meme on Twitter. It was like, it said Macy Barber's jab is as useless as this gate. And it's just a gate on a sidewalk without anything around it. It was like, yeah, pretty much. But yeah, no, Grosso did exactly what she had to do. She was patient, picked her shots, did the best during the grappling stuff. It was so close. Like every round I was like, oh man, you could make a case for either one. But yeah, no, I think Grosso definitely had more control in the situation, especially when it came to the striking. She's the one who was just landing those big power shots, and Macy Barber was just trying to hold on. So what's interesting is we'll see if Macy Barber can shake this, and hopefully any sort of remaining physical disability will go away in time. But can she get her game back mentally? Because I think that's what fucked her up more in this fight, more so than anything physical. It was something mental that just wasn't having her perform at her best. And if she can't get past this block, this might be a meteoric rise and meteoric fall, all within a few years of her entering the UFC.
Well, luckily for her, she's only 22, so she has quite a bit of time to where she can work on things. And just like you said, she came in. I felt like she was a little bit not squirmish. She was a little bit cautious going in, because I felt like she kept on staying like 5 yards away. I felt like, and then she kind of do too many like head and then punch fakes. And then Grosso didn't have any of it. She basically was like, yeah, like keep doing that, because I'm just gonna stand here and then I'm gonna make you come to me. And then Macy Barber wouldn't. So then Grosso would be like, okay, I'll come in and then I'll punch you, I'll jab you, because I'm the boxer. I can come in, jab you, and then come back out and get back in position. And she would do that, and then Barber would just take it, and then she would come in every now and then it hit a shot, but she was a little bit passive with her game plan. Like I've so used to seeing her be aggressive with the game plan, and she came in passive. So I do have a feeling that she was a little cautious because of her knee, but her knee seemed to hold up. And then as the fight got later on, I did feel like she got her game going because of her being down 2-0 on the scorecard. It could have been 1-1 going into the third, but that takedown at the end of the second round kind of won the second round for Grasso.
Yeah.
So we could have been, if she avoided that, we could have been talking about even with how bad she looked. Barbara could have taken this 2 rounds to 1 if she could have avoided that, because she did pretty good in the first half of the second round, and then she kind of fell off, and then she exploded in the third. That's why we have all 3 judges doing it 29-28, because she came out like a bull in a china shop and just went after Grasso. And I thought she was going to finish her, but then she didn't have enough time. Like she got going too late, and she's ranked number 10 right now, whereas Grasso is 15. So I kind of could see a situation where they kind of flip spots. I could see Grasso moving to 10, and then Barber moving to 15, maybe 12, and then I want to see Alexa Grasso face Roxanne Modafferi, who beat Barber, because she's ranked number 9. So I want to see her face her, and then I want to see Macy Barber face like an Andrea Lee or Alexis Davis, so she could try and get back into that top 10. I do think that this is a great division for Grasso, because she's so used to doing strawweight. She came up from strawweight the fight before, and it just seemed like she was out of position, like she was maybe too big and too slow for those straw weights. So she moved up, and now it seems like she fits at home here at flyweight, where she can use her strengths and then avoid some of the weaknesses of being too slow, because she's in the right spot. You tend to get these fighters where they're in the wrong division and they lose some of their essence of who they are. Like Cormier, like he kept floating between heavyweight and light heavyweight. He's too big for light heavyweight, but he was able to use the weight to use his wrestling and to just lay on guys. But then when he went up to heavyweight, he kind of lost some of that defensive wrestling, but he gained some of that knockout power again because he was big. Like that. And the same kind of with McGregor. Like he moved up, and I think he kind of lost some of that speed that he had at featherweight because he was tall. And then he moved to lightweight. At lightweight, he was pretty good there, but I felt like at welterweight he was a little heavy and sluggish. Like it's all about positioning and where you are division wise. You want to get in the right spot to where you can use all your strengths and then hide some of your weaknesses, because you're in the wrong division. You could be too slow, or you could be like your punch power is too light because you're in the wrong spot, or too slow, something like that. And then I feel like Grosser's in the right spot. She's going to be in the top 10 now. And then she's going to be somebody to watch out for in the future, depending on who she faces next. We got Bobby chiming in. Welcome to the Sports Box, boys.
Yo.
Thank you very much. And anything you want to say about this before we move to the main event?
Yeah, I mean, I was pulling for Barbara. I really was, because like if she had been on her game, before, the last fight where she got her knee blown out, this would have been a clean sweep. I have no doubt about it. She would have taken Grasso apart. But man, just a freaking knee injury, man. Those will get you. But I don't know. Grasso, for the division she's in, she's pretty good. She's definitely not a Macy Barber, but I don't know. I guess we'll see how she does in the future. Hopefully she's continues to improve, because when I was doing research on her fights, I was like, mediocre, between probably top 11, top 14 at best. Just a middle of the road fighter. But she takes this opportunity to really train and look forward and try to enhance all the things she's good at and maybe cover some of the things she's not. She could maybe go far in this division. I don't see her beating Shevchenko, but maybe she can get into the top 5 if she works really hard,
I don't know why I was so shocked about Grasso's boxing, because I mentioned she has like a kickboxing background, but she looked very crisp with that. Like I was expecting her to get like the grappling and get doing the takedowns a lot, but she was standing up there and she was jabbing and boxing for most of that, and then had so much success with it. So she didn't really have to go to that too much, to the ground. So it was nice to see her do that, because she can use that in the future, where she can be like, okay, I can use this. I can have confidence with my striking to where I don't have to go to the ground that much, and then hide some of that. So just like I said before, like I really want to see her and Roxanne Modafferi next. That would be perfect, that 10-9 matchup, to where it could be like the usher into her into the top 10 if she were to win that. And if she loses, and she probably stays at 10, so because she's at that 10 spot anyway. So that's the matchup you want to see next with that. You want to see her facing somebody that already beat Barber, who she just beat, so you can kind of gauge where you're at with that matchup.
Sure.
But before we go to the main event, I just want to go back to, this is the Sports Box, brought to you by Prix. Sign up, use promo code the box at sign up, and get 10 points at startup. Like they've been a sponsor for the Sports Box for a while, so definitely check them out when you get a chance. But moving on to the main event that we have for UFC 258, we had a welterweight championship matchup between Kamaru Usman against Gilbert Burns, which Usman defeated Burns by 3rd round TKO. What did you take from this fight?
So what's interesting is, I don't have live TV at my house. We don't have pay-per-view or anything like that. So whenever I watch the fights, I have to go find a place that's showing the fights, right? So this time I went to a place called Wolfie's that was showing the fight. Like, almost nobody was showing this fight, which is crazy. It was a great fight. But when I was leaving the house, my mom wanted to come watch the fights with me. So I was like, all right, cool. So we went to watch the fights. And this fight in particular, every time she saw Usman, she's like, that's a terrifying man. Holy shit, look at the muscles in his back. But this was a really good showing for Usman, especially because Gilbert Burns came out. It was just like I said he would. He would come out really heavy in the first round, and the first 2 rounds were key because Burns doesn't have the experience of going all 5 rounds the same way that Usman does. It's kind of his thing. So if he can't make something happen in those first 2 rounds, the chances of Burns winning go down exponentially after that. So Burns came out real heavy on the hands, and he got Usman a few times. He freaking walloped him like 3-4 times, and it looked like that may have been it. But unfortunately, he didn't capitalize as much as he should have on those hits, because I think he was worried about getting into a wrestling situation with Usman. Because when he would get a big hit and he would make Usman stagger, or that one where he almost put him down on the ground, Usman had to catch himself from falling all the way to the floor. Burns, it looks like he was getting in there to follow up, but he wasn't, springing in there with more big hits. He was just kind of walking over, and Usman had time to recover, put his guard up, and ride it out. And I think he missed those big opportunities, and he should have just gone for it, because even if Usman had wrestled with him, it was clear Usman didn't want to do a grappling game with him. Like that whole part where they were playing feetsies, where Gilbert Burns was on the ground, like slapping him with his feet. And Usman's like, dude, I'm not getting on the ground with you. Get up. So I think even if Usman had wrestled with Gilbert in those first 2 rounds, it could have turned into something of a jiu-jitsu match, and that would have given Burns the edge. But I think he was just too timid, and when he was given these golden opportunities, he didn't capitalize the way he needed to. Meanwhile, Usman spent the whole first round and then the first part of the second round finding his range, placing those jabs, figuring out exactly where he needs to be, because that's one of the things he does with that jab is he finds your range very quickly. He uses it as a measuring stick. So regardless if he hits you or not, he's learning a little bit more about how you fight. And so by the time we get into the second round, he's sticking those jabs left and right. And those jabs have a decent amount of power behind them, considering that they're jabs. I mean, they put Burns on the ground like twice, just made him fall on his ass. And yeah, I mean, just it added up over time, I think is what happened. Is as Usman found that range, he was then able to start sinking in those big power hits, like his big crosses, his hooks, things like that. And it just overwhelmed Burns up until the point where, Usman saw a golden opportunity, took advantage of it, and finished the round by TKO in the third round. So, I mean, yeah, it was a solid fight. It was like Burns, he had a plan going in, he had a strategy, but he just didn't execute the way he needed to. And that's, I think, where this fell apart, because we saw an excellent showing in the first round, and then it just diminished from there, unfortunately. So, I mean, I think he'll get another shot. I think we'll see more of Gilbert Burns in the welterweight division. He did really well, all things considered. It'll be interesting to see him kind of work through some more opponents within the top 5, I think, kind of get that experience back, and then maybe, a few years down the road, get another chance at the title if Usman's still holding it. And we'll get to see Usman Burns part 2, which I think would be a real dynamite fight. It'd be pretty sweet to see these guys fight again after Burns has gotten a little more experience. But yeah, also very, very emotional ending there. Usman, you see, he was on the verge of crying there because he was like, I think he felt bad that he had to beat up Burns to keep his title. But that's kind of what you got to do, I guess.
Yeah, and no one understands how much work both fighters put into this fight. I watch UFC Countdown, and then a thing that I applaud Gilbert Burns for with prepping for fights is he has all these big poster boards where he keeps game plans for each matchup on there, so he can go back to it if he ever has to fight a guy of that skill set. So he had like 5 poster boards out, and he was just looking through them. He was writing on one. He was like, I fought this guy who had this. I fought this guy who had that. And that's what I used to train for this fight. And then that fight. So I got to do this and that to counteract this. So he gets into the IQ part of the game where he tries to use that. And early on, he's working it well. Like he caught Usman right in the face, got him stunned and got him down, but he didn't take advantage of it. He was a little too passive. He didn't want to tire himself out like most fighters do, going for the kill. He was taking his chops a little too far apart. If he probably would have went for the kill and just went nuts right away, he might have gotten the stoppage there. Because Usman at first wasn't covering up. He was just taking the shots and not defending it. So that's kind of a mess up on Burns. But Usman was able to weather the storm. And there's one thing that I noticed in this fight that made a big difference to set up the jabs, and it was those newly trained leg kicks that he was using. I feel like that's like the rave now with all these fighters is adding those leg kicks in to set up the striking for certain fighters. Like he mentioned it in the post fight that he got that from Justin Gaethje, like learning those leg kicks, having them set up, because every time he would go for the leg kick, he'd get the leg kick, and then Burns would go to cover it, and then he'd just go in with the jab, go back to the leg kick, back to the jab. It was like his combo that he was using, and then he got Burns every time, and it kind of slowed Burns down by the third round to where he was just taking too much damage with the jabs because he couldn't move as quickly as he used to, because he's so used to not like getting hit there. But like before I get into that more, I got a comment. I'd rather see Usman rematch Covington, but it's possible Masvidal is getting the rematch. Who wins either as of yet? Hypothetical fights. Okay, so like I'm gonna get to that in a second, but but basically the leg kicks helped set up the jabs, which won him the fight here. Like Burns had no match for those, like, because he kept on having to try and defend the leg kicks, instead of blocking up. You see guys like block up and then leave their legs wide open. So he started to kind of hide his kicks. And then each time he do that, Usman would kind of change stance and go after the other leg and then go with the other hand. And then he'd just keep on switching back and forth, which worked perfectly for him. And then he was able to recover and then dominate the next 2 rounds and finally get the third round stoppage. And then after the fight, you had the emotion between the two. Like they were former training partners. They worked together for like 5 years or so. And then like it was respect. Like they didn't hate each other. They had the same goal, and that was the championship. They both wanted it, and then they had to put their friendship aside for that common goal. And then once it was done, you saw the respect from each other. No bad blood, no nothing. It was just, I wanted this, he wanted this. We had to put things aside because this is a business where you can't be both have it if you're in the same division. You got to go through each other now because they're in different camps now. Usman's in Denver, and then Burns is in Miami. So, and then what really got me was in the I'll get to lose thing right now, was they went to commentary. It was Rogan and Usman was like, put some respect on my name, put some respect, because he has he has the demeanor that he doesn't get the respect, but like he gets the respect. It's just that people get kind of bored with his fights because the past 2-3 fights, even though he had like a decision where he basically got a stoppage against Covington, in his 2 fights, he has a tendency to hold his opponent against the cage too much and try and waste their energy doing that, and it gets kind of boring. So people tend to not like that. So I wouldn't say they don't respect him. They just get bored of it watching him doing that, and they want to see fireworks. Yeah. So I think that kind of changed tonight. Not tonight, Saturday night, when he got the stoppage. I guess it could just kind of boiled over for him, where it was like, put some respect on my name, because he passed GSP for with 13 wins in the welterweight division, I believe.
Yeah, he's still, I don't think he has as many title defenses, but I think he did pass for overall number of wins in the division.
Yeah, he had 13 wins now, and then GSP had 12. But he's getting up there on defenses. It's going to take a while to catch John Jones, because he did a lot in a short amount of time. But like he's definitely one of those underrated guys, especially with his 0 takedown attempts successfully against him.
He has a perfect takedown defense. Yeah, perfect. Like, so he honestly, in his whole career, that's crazy.
He honestly knows something that he needs to do, and he does it when it comes to that. It's just he has to avoid the headshots here and there to keep him from being in that status of the number 1 fighter, with like the John Joneses and the Adesanas and whatnot, because of that. But other than that, like he is a very underrated UFC fighter when it comes to pound for pound. He just needs more of these fights where he dominates and gets a finish, because he tends to just wear guys out. And then I don't know if it's the division, because GSP did it, and then now you got him doing it. But like I'm excited for him to see what happens next. He went into, after he did put the respect on my name, he commented that there was this street Jesus going around talking trash on him still, which he's referring to Jorge Masvidal, where he's saying that he had this built-in excuse of only accepting the fight because it was on 6 days' notice, when he gave it to him several times, but he declined it. But now he's ready to give him a full training camp. And then it just came out the other day that both camps are looking to be coaches on the Ultimate Fighter, opposite of each other. I personally don't think Masvidal deserves the fight. I don't think he deserves it yet, because like he just lost to him, and now you're just giving him the fight again. Like I personally think it should be him, Masvidal versus Burns. Because that would be a good
That'd be a better
matchup.
matchup. Yeah.
Considering you got Covington against Leon Edwards, that looks like it's getting booked. Because I personally think Covington should get another shot, but I think he needs to take this fight against Edwards, win that, and then he should be guaranteed it after that. But then it got put out that Stephen Thompson just went out and said that he thinks he deserves a shot because he's there at number 5, and he's the only guy in the top 5 that Usman hasn't beaten. So he's putting his claim to a title shot. So I'll be interested to see what exactly happens. I think he's on the outs with that. He needs to get another fight and win that. I think maybe Stephen Thompson against Michael Chiesa fight, and then of course you got the Edwards, Covington, and then Masvidal, I guess, is getting Usman. But I could see Burns easily bouncing back with a win, whoever they put in front of him, whether it's Thompson, Chiesa, or whoever. He'll bounce back. He's that guy that he's in the position now. He took the champion to the brink of things in the first round, and then just got beat by a newly acquired leg game from Usman. He didn't expect it to happen, and then it led to the jabs. I think he'll take what he learned, go with it, and then learn, because he's still young to me, and he'll get another shot down the line.
Yeah, no, I think we'll be seeing again Gilbert Burns and Usman facing off again at some point in the future. I think he's going to be pretty comfortable in the top 5. But no, I think Thompson should get a shot if he's the only one who Usman hasn't beaten yet. But then after that, I think it's going to be like Usman's just going to be like, all right, so what's left for there to do? There's a whole bunch of people who want me to beat him up again. I feel like he'll be like, this is it. I've done all the things. I beat all the top 5, and they all want to do it again, but they're not going to win. But I don't know. If between Masvidal and Covington, I would like to see Covington get his jaw dislocated again. That shit was very satisfying.
Yeah. And then you had a couple people saying, "Oh, he's talking about both Masvidal and Covington." I'm like, he just said Street Jesus. That sounds like Masvidal. That doesn't sound like Covington. Covington has a mouth, but he's not called himself Street Jesus. I was like, Masvidal has been talking, but then he talks in the background. I feel like Covington will talk right in front of Usman, and then he'll talk.
Well, he went to his what was it, in Vegas or something, or before they fought. Yeah, that right before he was getting ready to fight, he did that little exhibition where they do the training for everybody, and he was there with his 2 second-place trophies, his interim belt, and his Trump hat, yelling at Usman. And he gets his jaw dislocated. I think the difference this time will be his jaw's wired shut, so he can't talk shit as well. He'll have to have little keyboard things with a speaker so he can type in all his shit talk, because he can't use his mouth anymore.
It's just sad because I was hoping to have that Edwards Chimaev fight, because that's the guy that if Chimaev would have beat Edwards, that would have been a perfect fight to see. Usman versus Chimaev, because he has those skill sets, and then that traits that would match up perfectly against Usman. That would have been a really great matchup. We're going to have to wait a couple of years for that because of this. I feel like we're having Tony Ferguson and Habib all over again with Edwards and Chimaev, with the 3 fights being canceled within a 5-month span. But we're gonna have to wait a couple of years for him. But I'm telling you, in the future, look for him, because he's going to be the guy that's going to make a difference and dethroning Usman if he doesn't lose that belt before that time. But before we move on, I went 3-2 my fight picks for the week. Overall, between last week and this week, I am 7-4. What I'm going to do each week is I'm going to keep tabs of my fight picks for the main cards, and then I'm going to add them up each week, and then let you guys know how I'm doing. I'm going to try and pride myself on doing good with my picks. I thought it was great this week. I had the first 3 fights good, and then I had the Barber and Burns. I took Burns, but I took him because of his value. They had Usman at minus 250, and then they had Burns plus 250. So like, you wouldn't really win anything if you went Usman unless you put a lot of money in, because it was like you bet $50 and you win 65. Whereas if you went Burns 50, you would win 200. So it's like, with how the matchups went, you kind of had to go Burns. Like, you didn't, but unless you had like a parlay going with the Usman, Burns was the better play percentage wise. And of course I got that wrong, but you know, 3 and 2,
5 for 5. What?
We're not going to talk about that right now.
Talking about, all right, that's fine. I'll just do it again next week. We'll talk about it then.
Yeah. And then we'll see about that too. Yeah. But moving on from the UFC 258 recap, if anybody has any questions about that before we move on, just comment, and then we'll get to it right away. But the next topic we have going on right now is Bellator. We had the Scott Coker announced the light heavyweight Grand Prix, which will take place from April to October. Of course, it's a 8-fighter bracket with the top 8 guys in Bellator, which I'm actually excited about, because this is one of my favorite divisions in Bellator. And when you look at the matchups, the first thing that jumped out on me was you had a matchup going right there between Yoel Romero and Anthony Rumble Johnson. The first question I have for you before we show the other matchups is this too soon to book Anthony Johnson versus Yoel Romero, or is this the perfect timing to do this?
I only know a little bit about Romero. I don't know anything about Johnson. I don't really follow Bellator all that much, but what's the controversy about booking it so soon? Is it like a match thing? Is it an injury thing? Like, what is it?
Well, both fighters have just signed from the UFC, because they're both Anthony Johnson was in the light heavyweight, and then Yoel Romero was actually he started out in middleweight, and then he moved to light heavyweight because he couldn't get past Whitaker. There was a controversy in their first fight where they thought Romero won, but they gave the decision to Whitaker because he was the champion.
Whitaker, right?
And then he lost the second fight, and then he fought Adesanya, and then basically just got beat. It was
plowed.
It was a boring fight. Adesanya didn't do anything. He didn't do anything, and just Adesanya got the count by a few punches here and there. And then Anthony Johnson is like Rumble Johnson. He's a wrestler, but he's more all about the power punching. But he's known for tiring out too fast if he doesn't get that power punch early on. But these two guys both signed right away. They're both for the division. They're trying to stock that division going. I guess they had this Grand Prix in mind. And you see this right away, like, wow, like you book it right away. You would have thought maybe they would have been on the same side of the bracket, but not fighting first right away. But to me, I guess the thought process in booking them right away is, what if one of the guys loses? Then you lose some of that star power right away.
Right.
So I guess they're thinking, let's book this right away, get the views right away. That way we can hide it if one of them were to lose before that, and then you kind of lose the luster of this matchup. If, say, you had like a Rumble Johnson going against Ryan Bader right away, and then he lost. Then you don't have that matchup, and it kind of gets pushed to the future. Then a lot of things can happen in that time. So I guess their thought process was, let's book it right away, get the views right away from that, and bank on that cash of the views, and at least one of the fighters will win this fight and then move
Yeah.
on. And then there's the possibilities of having a rematch later on.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Interesting. So this definitely sounds like a money grab thing,
Yeah,
like 100%. Because I mean, if you sign on immediately and then you get to go into the Grand Prix without any previous experience in the division, they're banking on the fact that they already have a pretty decent following. They have a reputation from UFC. But it's interesting because even then, even with that thought process, I'm not sure I would do this matchup because one of those guys has to lose, right? Unless you have a no contest, but essentially you have to end that with one winner and one person who loses, and you have two very valuable pieces there in terms of money makers for the company. So wouldn't you put them up against different people? Because when I look at the Bellator Grand Prix bracket, it looks like they could have put one of them up against the new guy, with that ridiculous last name that I can't pronounce because he's like Russian or something. Yegshivmuradov. Apparently, he's the new guy.
Yes.
So why not put one of these guys up against the new guy and then have the other person fight Corey Anderson? And then, you still got one guy securely with the star power. The other guy's a bit of a gamble. Like if you did Romero Anderson and then the other guy, just forgot his fucking last name, against Yeg Shamaradov. If we have that fight, I don't think we're worried about him losing to the new guy as much. And then Romero could probably give Corey Anderson a pretty decent fight one way or the other. But even if he lost, I think he could do a pretty good showing so that even if he didn't win, it would still be like, well, he had a good fight, right? Like people would remember a good fight. So I think that would be just a better long-term strategy instead of putting these two guys right at each other's throats at the beginning. And then one of them burns out. And then, the Bellator crowd's going to be over whoever loses. And I guess they're just banking on whoever wins. Like it's a very odd strategy, I think, in terms of, these two fighters having a long-term career within Bellator. I wouldn't have played it that way personally.
The problem with this was to me, the booking process was they put Ryan Bader on one side and they put Vadim Nemkov on the other side because Nemkov defeated Bader for the light heavyweight title earlier a few months ago. As everyone knows, Ryan Bader was a double champ. He won the heavyweight Grand Prix, and then which got him the heavyweight title over in Bellator, and then he had also had the light heavyweight that he had won before that. So this is his second Grand Prix. So their thought process right away was, I'm going to have Bader on one side, and I'm going to have Nemkov on the other side, and then we'll work from there. Yeah. So with the process of, okay, we won't have them in the first round, Romero and Johnson. So let's do the second round. But there's no way you could do that unless one of them is facing Bader or Nemkov in the first round, essentially.
Yeah.
Because then you have to work with that. So they're kind of put in like a handicap situation right there. And they're giving Bader and Nemkov like kind of like an easy matchup per se. And Machida, who's not easy, but he's at the end of his career per se. And then you give Nemkov Phil Davis, who isn't fighting well of late. So you want to have them advance because that's the matchup that the Bellator wants, is they want the rematch. So that leaves either you could wait and not have the matchup at all, and then you could have like Anderson against Johnson, and then what is it? Dovey against Romero. But then if they win those, they're going to either have to fight Bader or Nemkov, unless there was like a crazy upset where one of them loses. But I guess I guess the thought process was, we're going to have Bader here, Nemkov here, and then we'll just do the money fight right here, right away, so we could get it out of the way and make some money off of it. And then whoever wins that gets Nemkov, basically. So it can have another money fight there. And then the winner of that would hopefully fight Bader to make a third money fight. So like the thing is, we're trying to have our eggs all in this basket, so we could potentially have 3 great fights in this Grand Prix. But it all hinges on all these guys winning the way they should. But I wouldn't sleep on that Dove guy, because from what I hear, he was a champion there. He has a wrestling background, which is really well, and he can strike. So, and then he's facing Anderson, who's another guy that is a newcomer. He just signed 3-4 months ago. So you got this 8-man Bellator bracket, and 4 of the guys are newcomers. So
I think it's interesting how they set that up, where it's like 2 champion v former champ, or like one of them's current champion versus a former champion, and then 2 former champions duking it out, and then the best of those get to fight the matchup between the best of the newcomers, basically.
Because you got newcomer against newcomer, then newcomer versus newcomer, and then they kind of like, instead of having former champ, newcomer, blah blah blah, but because they wanted to keep Bader here and Nemkov here, they kind of handicapped them with everything else.
Right. But I think they just wanted it to be a little bit more even, probably, for newcomers who maybe don't have as much experience fighting in Bellator specifically. So I don't know, maybe that was the thought process of just having newcomers, and then the best of the newcomers duke it out, and then have, the former champions kind of duke it out, and then the best of them move on. And then you've got the former, or the champions versus the newcomers from there on out.
I thought maybe they could have switched Dovey with Machida, had Dovey against Bader, and then had Machida against Anderson. Then it kind of would have balanced itself out a little bit. But they went this way, and then the way, like, my first impression is, the way I see it is, it's going to be I actually think it's going to be Bader and Dovey. I think Dovey's going to surprise Anderson, and then I got Bader winning that side to advance the finals, and then on the other side, I got Nemkov beating Phil Davis, and then I got check for this one. I got Yoel Romero taking out Anthony Rumble Johnson, and then I got Yoel Romero shocking Nemkov, and then I got Bader winning back his title in the Grand Prix.
Interesting.
But that's the first impression. This doesn't start to April, so we're going to be able to break this down in a couple months when they get time for that in April, because they're going to do, I think all 4 fights are going to be done in the span of 2 weeks in April. Then they're going to do semifinals in July, and then the finals in October. So it's going to be pretty quick compared to the featherweight Grand Prix that they did, where it was, I think, 16 fighters, because the featherweight division stacked. It's just that this division was kind of light, because the smarter divisions they're bigger in, and then the heavyweight they're kind of good in. It's just this division was light, and they were able to bring in 4 guys, to pack up this division very well compared to what it was before. So I think it's a great move by Bellator. This has been their bread and butter, their Grand Prix. This is the one thing that I could see the UFC actually take a thing, notes from Bellator, and be like, let's do these Grand Prix, because you can have some shocking matchups and things happen that you're not aware of. And instead of having these issues with booking, you just do 1 through 8, have 1 against 8, 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. And whoever wins the tournament and gets the belt, and then do it that way. And then you basically, I think that's what I think PFL had. They have that format. PFL does it. They do like 4 fights in a season, and then they do that in like a 2-3 month span, and then they're done until next year. They've taken that, and then they're getting successful with that, and that's why they got to deal with ESPN. But UFC's big. But I think they could take this away from Bellator in the future. And I think they will, but I think they'll put their own spin on it.
Yeah, maybe that would be a good format for doing like cross weight division matchups that everybody wants to see. I think that'd be a good format for them to do that with.
Yep. But to move away from Bellator and go into Gina Carano, of course, we had it put out last week. We just didn't get to talk about it. Gina Carano was fired from Disney and released by her agency after controversial comments made on social media. What's your opinion on all of this?
Yeah, it's just kind of been a long time coming. Like I know a lot of people. The controversy is people are like, "Oh, Disney fired Carano because she did a thing that compared, conservatives to Jewish people." But in reality, that's not the only thing she did. Like this wasn't like one day Disney was like, "Oh, you posted a thing on the internet we didn't like. You're fired." No, she has a long record of this. So it started way back when you had the George Floyd shooting and then the Black Lives Matter protest. She was online shitting on Black Lives Matter people. And then later on, you had her doing voter fraud conspiracy theories, especially like post. I think it was like November 4th, like right when the tide turned and Biden started winning. She started going online and saying, "Oh, fake votes. We need voter IDs and we need to flush out the fake votes, only count the real votes." Like, the basic sort of thing. And then she goes on to do anti-masker stuff. And she also implies that there's like some sort of like weird some sort of weird conspiracy theory, where they say like you're going to get microchipped by the vaccine sort of thing, except with the anti-maskers. She put up a picture where it said like you need to wear masks on your mouth and your eyes so you can't see what's going on. The implication there is pretty clear. So this was just another thing in that timeline. And I think Disney was nervous about it at first because this started back in like, she probably started getting on Disney's radar at like September. And they started sitting down with her and being like, "Hey, don't do that. Stop that." Because Disney's very, very protective of their image, right? So they've been sitting down with her a lot, being like, "Hey, you need to knock that off. Stop doing that." And then finally this happened. Now, I think the thing that made this different was the Capitol riots on the 6th, because this happened post all of that. And if you look at the previous controversial tweets and stuff she put out there, all that was like November before December, that sort of thing. But they were the sorts of rhetoric and the sorts of things that led to the Capitol riots, the things that people who, did those riots were saying all up until that happened. And I think once she put this, thing alluding to the Holocaust and all that out there, I think Disney was like, "All right, we got to cut her loose. Like she is too much of a PR liability and we can probably find someone just as good, if not better." But the funniest part of this is what happened next, right? So Gina Carano gets cut from Disney, and here comes Ben Shapiro. Just runs in there real quick to pick up Gina Carano, and it's hilarious because he's clearly just doing this for the grift, 100%. Because when you see his video where he makes the announcement that they're picking up Gina Carano for his movie production company that just started, he's basically spends the whole video like lying and misleading about what exactly she said. Like he tries to downplay it, make it seem like it's not so bad, and that Disney's just firing Gina Carano because she's a conservative, which isn't true because Chris Pratt is an outspoken conservative and he's still the headliner for Guardians of the Galaxy because he just knows how to be professional and appropriate. So he isn't, getting himself into trouble like that. And so, once Ben Shapiro picks up Gina Carano, he wants to kind of fan the flames of his audience to get them to come out and see the new movie he's going to put her in, because his first movie did not do well. It did very, very poorly. And so I think he thinks if he picks up Carano, he gets a little more star power in there and he riles his crowd up just the right way. He'll be able to probably make back the money he lost from the first movie. It did very badly. I think on Rotten Tomatoes it was like 23% approval rating from critics. It was like there was 1,000 reviews. It had a 93% audience score, but 850 to 900 of those came in one day, and they were all from his fans. So the rest of them were like half a point scores, one star scores. So yeah, I think we'll see what happens with Gina Carano. She might kind of fall into the Ben Shapiro grifting thing and just do that for the rest of her career. Cause I mean, he makes a lot of money doing it. So it's not like it's not lucrative, but I don't know. We'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, like I agree with you on all of this. She kind of dug her grave, but I will say one thing that was kind of a double standard to me with Disney is you mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy and you mentioned Chris Pratt. Who's the director?
I actually don't know who is directing that movie.
James Gunn. And what happened with James
Oh yeah,
Gunn? He got fired for similar
right.
things, and then they brought him
Well,
back
it was a
because
little
the
different. Yeah, it was a little
I,
bit
I,
different in terms of that because
I,
the thing
I
that
think he
happened
was
there,
I think he was worse because he did a whole bunch of different things with what he
right?
said. Like I will say, like this added up. I think it was more so the stuff that added up for her. Like this was like the fourth or
Mhm.
fifth time that she did something, and then they were like, okay. But I think what he did was twice as worse what she did. But I guess because he made a lot of money with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and Batista made a big deal that if you don't bring him back, then I'm leaving the franchise. And then I
Right.
guess
Yeah.
I had to try and force their hand. But to me, it's like a
Yeah.
double standard if you bring him back uh, for the after you fired him for similar reasons, but then you fire her, and it looks like there's no chance of her being back on a
Right.
franchise
Well,
that
I mean,
was
the
big.
sure. Yeah, the Tim Gunn situation was different on the basis of the things that came out in the media about what he said were literally things from like 7 years ago, like 7 years before the fact. Someone went back, dug up a bunch of things he had said in the past. Some of them he had been saying them like sarcastically, like they were badly
Yeah,
told jokes, distasteful jokes, but they were like 7 years old. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? And then someone brought that out specifically to make him look bad. And then Disney got worried about the reputation and we're like, oh shit, how is the public going to react to this? And so they jumped the gun and kicked him off. And then when people realized, oh, this is something from like 7 years ago, they're like, okay, he's not the same person he was 7 years. Obviously, you can change a lot in 7 years, but with Sereno, this is like current. We've been
yeah,
tracking this. This is in real time, and she still supports a lot of the positions. The only one she actually walked back a little bit was the transphobic shit with the beep boop bop thing because she
yeah,
talked to Pedro Pascal and he explained to her why that's so offensive, even though she had it explained to her. She just didn't seem to listen to it until he said it. And then she went on Twitter and kind of walked it back. She was like, oh, that's not what I meant by that, and this and that. But like, I mean, this isn't from 7 years ago. This is from like what's that, 5 months, 6 months ago? Like,
yeah.
and these are still things she's espousing and still things she believes. So I don't know if it's necessarily the same because Tim Gunn was specifically targeted, and he had things that from the past he said, which I don't think he even necessarily believes. They were just badly told jokes, but they were specifically dug up to make him look bad. There was no really digging involved here. All you had to do was just look at her Twitter account and go, oh, okay. Yeah, that's what she thinks. That's her,
Yeah, hopefully she takes ownership for most of the stuff in the future, and then she rebuilds her reputation because she can come back
Yeah,
from this. She can. It's going to take a
she could.
while.
Yeah,
She just
I
has to
think
take
she
ownership.
could.
Yeah, she,
I think unfortunately, while she could, because now she's associated with Ben Shapiro, she won't. Because that's part of what Ben Shapiro does is he supports all the same positions, and that's how he riles up his base to go, see his movies, do his subscription thing for his
yeah.
show. So if she's a part of that, she's then going to have a monetary incentive to keep saying and doing those things.
Well, I'll help her out. I'll tell her right away. Drop Ben Shapiro.
Right?
Hire me. I'll take you to WWE.
There you
Get
go.
you out of that for a couple of years. You could go there, make a lot of
Yeah.
money, repair your
Right.
image because Vince McMahon will do that. And then you have kind of that
Mhm.
background where I think she would do that and then go back after that, like a few years later, go back to acting because they'll be like, oh,
Sure.
you're successful on WWE, you repaired your image, we'll bring you back. Yeah, do that.
Right. Yeah.
Make me some money and then I'll make you money in return.
There you go. There
but
you
but
go.
she's got to do
So,
something like that where she does something else, gets herself out of the limelight and repairs things, and then comes back because then she can
right.
come back and then start getting these type of roles again because people are going to be hesitant now to give her roles now until she repairs that
Yeah.
image. But
Yeah. And I think Ben Shapiro is going to work very, very
yeah,
hard and put a lot of money into keeping her because his first movie had like no good actors. They were all unknowns.
yeah,
The movie was terrible. The plot was poorly written. I I went through and I got my favorite comment on the audience ratings. This was the best one. It says, "I wonder who invested in this movie to manipulate the market this way.
yeah,
No one hears the 5 initial gunshots through the whole school, even in the restroom 3 meters away. Every authoritative person in high school is ridiculously neutralized somehow. Law enforcement can't arrive for an hour because of a traffic jam, even though
yeah,
the movie's based in a town with a population of 5,000 people in rural America. The lockers are bulletproof." And that's only the first 20 minutes. So I think she needs to definitely get away from Ben Shapiro. That's not going to
yeah,
do well for her. These are not going to be like big movies that people will remember her for. This is just going to be that time in her life where she made some bad choices. So
yeah,
hopefully she can recover, but
yeah.
depends on how far down the rabbit hole she goes.
But to move on from this shit show to the last topic we have before we wrap things up, it was just one announced today by Brandon Moreno. He heard from UFC management. This isn't official yet, but it looks like the rematch between Davison Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno is likely to take place in April at UFC 261. They mentioned it to him, wasn't set in stone, but it's more than likely it's like a 75-25% thing. But
Right.
I'm going on the likelihood that that happens with all these title fights that they're having right now in March booked. They want to book this one because this fight, like the first thing I think of is just like fight of the year, like one of the fights of the year back because they went and they fought in November, then came back on 3 weeks notice and fought each other, and then they
Yeah.
had a 5 round just beat down central.
Mhm.
Like both guys went at it, and it was like one of my favorite fights. And then, how do you see like just first impression of the rematch? How do you think that it might go this time
Yeah.
around?
Yeah, no, that was an interesting fight. And I called that one too. That one I said Figueiredo would go by decision, but I didn't expect Moreno to have that good of a performance. Like he definitely shocked some people. He did very, very well. And I think with the right training, he could win. But at the same time, Figueiredo, I think, realizes that that fight was a hard one for him. He won, but it wasn't an easy fight. He didn't just skate by on that. So I think he's going to also go and he's going to make some adjustments in his training. And now that it's been booked so far in advance, we're coming up on UFC 259, so he's got two whole ass UFCs to go before this
Yeah,
fight happens. So I think he's got enough time. Both fighters have enough time to really, plan out a good strategy. Figueiredo's got some time to figure out where the holes in his game were, and Moreno is going to try to capitalize on his strengths from that fight. But I don't know. I think if we see a rematch, Moreno would have to make some pretty big adjustments in order to be able to fare with Figueiredo, because it was a standing and trading fight, which I think was probably a better move on Moreno's part. Figueiredo is an excellent grappler. He's an excellent ground fighter. And I think if he got too tied up in the ground fighting aspect, he might bite off more than he can chew. So that kind of presents a problem for Moreno though, because he tried the standing and trading thing and it didn't work out. So he might need a mixed approach, kind of like Patello and Marquez on this 258, where you try to wear him out a little with the grappling, kind of get him tired, score some points for octagon control and aggression. Maybe not on your takedowns, but you can put a decent number of points on the card. And then once they're a little more tired, they're a little easier to deal with in the hands. And as long as he can keep his gas tank and his aggression up, he might have a chance at it. But at a rematch, I would still look at Figueiredo as probably pulling through in a victory. Probably this time not by decision, maybe something more definite, seeing as they're both going to be going for the win this time. So they're both going to be going bonkers on each other. So that usually ends in either submission or a knockout, more likely than not, just because they add up so much damage so quickly. Someone just breaks.
I actually think that Moreno's going to use the same game plan of sorts because you saw as the fight got later and later, Figueiredo got tired because he's so used to winning in the first round. Second round with the explosion, and Moreno was able to weather that. He was able to contain it, and then he went on and he just like wore Figueiredo down. He took some damage, but gave it back. And then I thought he had it. I think it was the third round, but then like he let up on it, and then they kept going. I personally thought instead of the draw that they gave it, I personally thought it was 3-2 Moreno because I felt like he was the aggressor more so in this fight than Figueiredo. But of course, with it being kind of iffy, they always go on the side of either a draw or the champion. But the two judges had it 29-28 opposite of each other. One judge had Moreno and the other had Figueiredo, so that kind of makes it a draw with how it was. But I could see something similar like that. I think he's going to go with that, and I kind of think Figueiredo might lay off in the first couple of rounds. I don't think he's going to go butt guns blazing right away because I think he's going to know that. I think he's going to have it back in his head like, if I don't finish him right away, I'm going to be in for the same result as before. So maybe I'll lay off a little bit, and then maybe in round 2 and 3, I'll go for that. I'll kind of see where it goes, feel him out in the first round, and then I'll get it going a little bit later and catch him by surprise. But to me, it's too soon to pick somebody. I might go with Moreno by decision right now, but if I see something different from Figueiredo where he comes in later instead of coming out guns blazing right away, I wouldn't be surprised if he were able to finish him in round 3 or 4 by doing that tactic. But it's like these guys match up really well against each other, and I think it's going to be another great matchup between them because they're both solid fighters, and they both don't get the recognition that they deserve. They're at that small division, but they will in April. But do you have anything to say before we get going? We're at the end of the show on our debut edition of Cage My IQ here at the Sports Box, and of course I'm D Bake. Anything before we go?
Yeah, no. Thanks to the Sports Box for hosting us. That was super cool. Also, I run my own podcast as well. It's the Laughs and Rec podcast. It's an audio and streaming kind of blended podcast. I got a stream coming Tuesday. If you want to check it out on Twitch, it's same spelling as on my nameplate right here. Just tune in. We'll be doing a variety show, assuming we have power and stuff. But I was gonna do some Karen meltdowns, some funny videos, as well as I did last week a video compilation talking about a bunch of bad martial arts and bad martial and self-defense stuff and defense against guns and knives and why the things in the videos don't work. So we'll be throwing that into the mix on the wheel as well. So we'll probably end up talking a bit about that. So that'll be fun. We just released an audio episode too. It was a pretty funny one. I enjoyed it. Every week is audio and video content. So drop by and check my stuff out as well. And thanks again to Sportsbox for having us. It was awesome.
Yeah, we got Lou chiming in. Good job, fellas. Glad to have you on the team. We're glad to be here. And then keep an eye on Thursday afternoon because me and my buddy Jim will be releasing a bonus episode of Cage My IQ where we preview UFC Fight Night, Curtis Blades versus Derek Lewis. I'm going to try and bring out more content instead of just once a week when we have these weeks like we just did where we review pay-per-view and then do some news. I'm going to release a bonus episode later in the week to preview Fight Night. That way we still get those in there. I get my picks in and then we get all the content out because we want to bring all the MMA content that we have and can. And then I think we might start dabbing into a little bit of Bellator when he comes back in April. That way we can check that out and get to know some of those fighters more. But we're going to majority of the time just hanging with the UFC because that's the premier MMA promotion out right now where we get all the focus on it. And We thank everybody for tuning in today to Cage My IQ. And of course, I am your host, D-Bake, and this is my co-host, Miles Long. We will see you next Monday at 8:30 Eastern Time, and where we will more than likely bring you the news of the week and then review UFC Fight Night. Have a nice night, everybody.
Thank you for watching this episode of The Sports Box. Please remember to follow us on all of our social media outlets. On Facebook at SportsBox Show, Twitter at SportsBox Show, Instagram at The SportsBox Show. Find us on YouTube and join Outside the Box, our Facebook sports discussion group. The Sports Box is brought to you by our sponsor, Showcase Sports in Hamilton. Showcase Sports for the elite athlete. And also our friends over at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and use promo code THEBOX at sign up for 10 free points. Thanks for joining us this evening.